Welcome, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started because we're a few minutes after and we have a great presentation today. And I know all of you will have a lot of questions, those that are in the room and those are online. So welcome again. My name is Joyce Hertko. For those of you who haven't met me yet, I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at Regenstrief. I'm really excited to introduce our two guests today. Our first is Nicholas Hammond. Nick is an innovative executive and researcher with over 15 years of demonstrated leadership in technology, intellectual property development, technology transfer, licensing, and commercialization. Nick, about a year ago, Nick was named Associate Vice President for Innovation and Commercialization at Indiana University. He comes to us from the American Dental Association Science and Research Institute, where he is director of the Department of Innovation and Technology Research. He has also served as the chief operating officer at Terramune, Associate Vice President for Innovation and Economic Development at the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science, and Assistant Director of the University System of Maryland Institute of Marine Technology and Environmental Technology. Nick has a PhD from the University of Mississippi and a bachelor's degree from Butler, and he's originally from the Indiana area. So welcome, Nick. Our second speaker today will be Phil Dowd. Phil is the director of the IU Innovation and Commercialization Office. He has served as Director of Innovation of Research Administration at the American Dental Association Science and Research Institute, Director of Intellectual Property at Array Photonics and at Arizona Technology Enterprise. He has his bachelor's degree in physics and a PhD in physics from the University of Bath in England. Both Nick and Phil come to us from the IU Innovation and Commercialization Office. That office is available to partner with IU faculty to explore commercialization options related to their research and to develop a customized plan to translate their work and technology to apply solutions to customers and benefit the public. So right in a sweet spot for Regenstrief Institute. So I think, Nick, you're up first, followed by Phil. Thank you for being here.
All right, thank you. Is my mic on? I think it's on. All right, excellent. First of all, thank you for inviting us. We're very excited to be here. I'm excited to be here. We're with the Office of Innovation and Commercialization for Indiana University, as you heard. Our goal today is one, to kind of give you a background of why our office exists, what benefit we can provide to all of you as investigators, and to have you have a little bit better understanding of the processes in our office and how our office works, so that it helps you work with our office. And additionally, I want to make sure that we leave time at the end for all of you to ask questions. So we're going to give just a brief, I'll give a brief number of slides, Phil will give a brief number of slides, but we want to make sure that we engage and answer all of your questions. So as an initial overview, ICO, the Innovation Commercialization Office of IU, our goal is to accelerate discoveries and research from the universities and the university's partners towards the market. So our office helps work directly with researchers, facilitate collaborations, initiate collaborations with industry, our partners in industry, and also promote economic growth in Indiana. We do this through doing an evaluation of your discoveries, giving feedback. We'll talk a little bit about that more today, and facilitating an understanding of what have you discovered and how can it benefit society? How can we direction it towards the market? How can we protect it through intellectual property protection? But we're really a service-based office. So to give you just a little bit of an overview of how our office is structured, you may have heard around April, May, we restructured. The restructure within our office at IU was really focused towards the 2030 goals, which I'll talk to in a minute, and achieving these goals as a university. So we transitioned towards a team-based approach for our office, and we now have 3 teams that you may interact with as you engage with our office. The first team I'll talk about is Technology Development and Commercialization Group. It's what you traditionally think of as a tech transfer office. It's staff from our office after you disclose to our office, doing faculty outreach, engaging, understanding your discovery, capturing and protecting those innovations through patenting or copyright, and then doing a commercialization evaluation, having a better understanding where it fits, whether it's been done before, whether it's novel, and giving that feedback back to the investigator, and engaging the investigator to make a determination of how to best move forward to protect or transition that technology towards the market. The second team is a team that does a lot of the background, kind of the back office support. We're required to do federal compliance reporting for every discovery that's related to federal funding, making sure that any agreements that you may need for partnership agreements with an industry partner, like confidentiality agreements, material transfer agreements related to intellectual property, and any due diligence requirements if you decide to take the reins and do a startup yourself. The third group, the third team, is a new team to our office. It's an industry partnerships group. It's very strategically aligned with investments of the university over the last year. The goal of that group is to work directly with the executive directors of the new institutes, Sabati, the Health and Wellness Institute, IU Creates, IU Indy, to come up with a vision and strategy of how they want to interact with industry partners, providing that vision and capacity to identified industry partners, and bringing that understanding back of what the industry needs are to develop teams of faculty to address industry needs. So the technology development group kind of pushes out technology from the university, and the industry partnerships brings ideas into the university to build teams. So as I mentioned, the changes in our office is really towards those 2030 goals. At the university, if you've looked at the strategic plan for 2030, there's a university level plan, and then there's 3 campus level plans. So I'll be talking directly towards the university level plan. It's 3 pillars. The pillar 2, research and innovation, is squarely aligned within our office's goals. So as you break it across those teams, the university level strategic plan calls for a doubling of the number of invention disclosures. So with that one, we've clarified the internal process in our office, and then we're looking to engage further with faculty, get them to understand more about our office, how they can engage with our office, understand when and how and why they need to file an invention disclosure with our office, and what that process may look like through presentations like this. Within the operations and licensing, it's a goal to increase the amount of licensing by 25% and double the number of faculty startups. So we've clarified some of the processes within our office to facilitate that. So increasing the number of license agreements, we're actually being very active about that already, and as well as clarifying with faculty how to move forward with requirements for a startup. With the industry partnerships team, to increase the amount of industry sponsored research that goes on at the university by, I think, 25% or 50% by 2030. With that, as I already mentioned, the alignment with the institutes that have already been created in the Office of Research. So we're actively well on our way. This is just a brief overview of kind of different buckets that you might consider of the services within the Office of Innovation and Commercialization. So obviously, the first step in engaging with our office generally is filing an invention disclosure. So that allows us to, which Phil will talk about likely in a few minutes, allows us to basically assign you a docket number so you get into our system so that we know that you exist and that you have a new invention or potential invention that you'd like to discuss with us. We will be then immediately scheduling a meeting to speak with you and learn more about your invention, schedule a follow-up meeting after we do some initial evaluation. That's to allow us to do what's called intellectual property protection. Make a decision whether to move forward in patenting, move forward in copyright protection. And in that evaluation, we also gather a better understanding of what external partners may be interested in your invention or your innovation, and give you that feedback as well to look for opportunities to partner. We also support faculty startups through the licensing process to the startup, and also due diligence requirements so that you understand what it really means to do a startup and what you'll be required materials that you'll be required to put together for due diligence requirements for investors. We also handle all royalty revenues that come into the university from licensing. I think it's a misconception that all those royalty revenues come to our office. Those royalty revenues come to our office to be redistributed across the university to creators and inventors. And also support campus units. So we don't hold those as necessarily a revenue generator for our office. We just manage the royalties themselves. We also have student interns annually, a student intern program over the summer. And I'll mention this, it's not on here, we'll be launching a new program in the spring called the Faculty Innovation Ambassadors Program. What we'd like to do is have faculty that are interested in learning more about the commercialization process in our office and commercialization in general, engage with our office, go through additional training, and be a trusted resource back to their colleges and schools. So look for new additional information on that. The last thing, this is the last slide that I'll mention. I just want to update you on the Indiana University's IP policy. With that, over the last year, the intellectual property policy for IU was revised. It was voted into replacement of the previous IP policy in June, and so we're looking at implementing it now. The major changes to the policy were breaking out how we handle copyrights from how we handle patents and inventions. So it's now two different policies. It's IU 23 and or UA 23 and UA 24. UA 23 is the copyright policy. It really just clarifies ownership of intellectual property. One thing I'll mention is it doesn't change ownership by faculty of scholarly works and training materials. It also clarifies the responsibility to disclose inventions and creations to the university. The role of our office is really to make the determination of ownership. It's not really enforcement of ownership, I would say. So with UA 24, the major changes with that is previously the policy and changes to policy was held by the Board of Trustees. It's now held by the Vice President of Research, Office of Research. That is going to allow us over the next year to get additional input and any updates to the policy, it'll be a little bit easier to make. It also, again, clarifies ownership and exceptions of intellectual property and patents, university versus faculty ownership, and emphasizes, again, the importance to disclose all inventions in a timely manner. The last major change was the revenue distribution model was changed. So the inventor share was basically increased to 50% from 35%, and the other percentages remain the same. There was an elimination of the lab portion that was rolled into the creator distribution share. What we're working on now is the creation of 2 new IP councils that will be engaging. We're just creating them now to help us give feedback and handle any issues with the IP policies going forward to make sure that we're engaging across the campuses. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Phil and let him go through his process.
CEO in late May, and this isn't my first time around in the tech transfer office. I spent 12 years at Arizona State University's tech transfer office, and part of the things that we were trying to do during my time there was to build trust with our clients, our customers, our researchers, our faculty, and to build solid relationships with the outside world. Again, clients, customers that we could do business with, and with similar broad aims in mind of doubling invention disclosure and all those nice things that hopefully will come out. But how do you get there to be able to actually do all of that stuff? You have to have some good processes. You have to build trust. It takes time. So what we are working to do is to basically, we are the bridge between the innovation and the research and development that takes place within the university. And we are the bridge between that innovation and hopefully a successful outcome for the intellectual property is that we can form perhaps a new company if we have an appropriate platform type of technology, or it's a license to an existing company, or the other significant outcome can be, because many of our technologies are nascent and they're not fully developed, that you may be looking for additional R&D support to enable those projects to move forward, to be able to turn into products in the future. There can be additional sponsored research at the organization. So our role in that bridge is to identify what IP that we have, how we can develop that and protect that IP. We'll carry out the commercial due diligence. It turns out you can patent anything. And I mean that because there's a patent out there called Method for Exercising a Cat. You take a laser pointer, you shine the laser pointer spot on the floor, and you move that spot around, and the cat chases after the spot in a manner therapeutic to the cat. You could actually patent that. That was patented. Could you prove that that was being infringed? How many people have exercised a cat at home with a laser pointer? You have been infringing someone's intellectual property. So it's important to understand that when you create IP, that it's actually solving a real problem. There's a market for this. Someone cares about this to the extent where, oh, we can take advantage of this, but also it has to be something that can be enforced. So we'll go through an assessment and we'll do marketing of the technology to understand, is there a real world need? Because we can't patent everything. We have a limited budget. There's only so much that we can do. And we have some strategies to involve, and I'll go into our process in a little bit more detail and why we do this. So yeah, we do the marketing, we hopefully licensing startups or research collaborations. So why do we do what it is that we do, and why do we patent stuff, and why do we have a process? We are not good at predicting the future. If we knew what the next big thing was going to be, we'd all be very happy somewhere in Hawaii or somewhere else around the world, retired. And so over history, and this is, forgive me, I'm a physicist from training, and I have a lot of electrical physics, became electrical engineering. This is the sort of stuff that is a little bit more in my technical wheelhouse, so to speak. And so thinking about technologies through the ages, these are actual quotes from individuals at the times that certain technologies were developed. This telephone has too many shortcomings to be seriously considered as a means of communication. The device is inherently of no value to us, was made by Western Union in an internal memo in 1876. In 1943, Thomas Watson, president of IBM, I think there's a world market for maybe 5 computers. How many computers are there in this room today? And I think more to the point is, how many computers does each one of you have in your possession at this very moment? Your phone is now a computer as well. You may have a tablet. You can have 3 devices with you. There's no reason for anyone to want a computer in their home. Well, again, we have smart TVs. We have all these devices. And then one of my favorites is from the time at 2007. So in 2007, I was working at Arizona State University, and I had a BlackBerry. How many people have owned a BlackBerry? How many people loved their BlackBerry and thought that it was wonderful? How many people would want to go back to a BlackBerry now with a keyboard? Oh, there's two people, two contrarians over there. So basically, when the iPhone was developed and it came out, $500 for a phone, fully subsidized with a plan, that's an expensive phone, and it doesn't appeal to business customers because it doesn't have a keyboard, which does not make a very good email machine. How many people actually with their phones type the messages versus dictate their messages and talk to their phones and have them send messages? So the iPhone, perfectly good device. I like iPhones. I have one myself. I prefer it to the BlackBerry. I would never go back. But the point is that senior business leaders were making these types of decisions or these statements saying, hey, we don't see a future for this. But the point is, none of us are bright enough and smart enough to know what the next big things happen to be. So when we do have disclosures, our aim is to try to capture protection over as broad a number of the disclosures that we can, and then throw them out in the real world, if you will, to market those, to understand what problems we could be solving and where there is traction. So we will have basically, golden rule number one is build trust, provide quality, which I'll go on into our processes. But our second golden rule is basically we have to actively market our cases. We have to understand where there is value and to make decisions based on where there is value and where there is perceived lack of value. Maybe you are a Me Too technology that's coming to the stage several years after the fact. There are plenty of competitive solutions. You're not solving a problem that industry really needs you to solve anymore. You just have an alternative. So that way we can focus our patent and copyright investment dollars on those where it makes more sense. We're not going to have an improved method for exercising a cat and trying to market that. So we will market our cases, and when it comes to assessing how these technologies are going to impact a company's business, we will understand what the business is intending to do, how it will benefit from the technology, so that we can come up with appropriate deal terms that doesn't necessarily maximize the value. We're not going to sit there and say we want to have $1 million for technology. We're going to say, okay, what does this technology do for you? How do you stand to benefit from this? How do we share the risks that we can come up with appropriate terms in terms of royalty rates and the like, so that we can move forward with the industry quickly? We do not want to pick home runs. Rather, what we want to do is to move forward as many technologies to create impact in the outside world quickly and fairly. So not predicting the winner and spending all our time on that, but giving equal service to everything in our portfolio, recognizing there can be a home. So basically, and I'll go through our process steps in a moment in more detail, but the basic process is we'll work with faculty to bring in the invention disclosure. We will do an assessment of that technology and we'll share the feedback with the researchers. We'll then create marketing materials, we'll identify marketing targets, and we'll do our outreach and we'll document that, because that will inform how we wish to go forward with patents or copyright or not. So we have put into place a process that can be outlined by these basic 7 steps. And this is very much a dialogue and a collaborative process between us and our stakeholders, whether it's the inventors and then talking to companies. But the first step is the disclosure, the invention disclosure, the technology disclosure. And we like to work with researchers sooner rather than later. So even if an idea is not fully formed, we have an understanding of what that technology is. We can guide you to say, these are the things that we need in order to be able to do an evaluation, so that we can get into this early, allowing us to do a review so that when the more detailed information can come through, we are in a position to move quickly, because in an academic environment, we have obviously folks want to publish, and we do not want to stop people from publishing. In fact, publishing can be a good form of publicity for our technologies. What we want to do is to allow people to disclose, to go through an evaluation process, to secure IP protection where appropriate, and to make it compatible with the publication process. So we have the disclosure, we'll do a thorough evaluation, we'll look at the patents, we'll look at the business case, and we'll deliver a report based on that. And we'll discuss that with faculty, we'll discuss that. This is what we're thinking, tell us your feedback too. And again, it's a collaborative discussion, a dialogue to come up with what we should be doing as a strategy. And if we do have a strategy, then it says, okay, we're going to protect this intellectual property. Is it copyright? Is it a patent? How do we start going through the patenting process to secure some level of protection whilst minimizing the financial burden, because patenting can be very expensive? When we have protection in place, we'll go through marketing, and we will talk to our researchers regarding, are they interested in a startup? Who do they know from their interactions at conferences and other dealings? We'll do our own marketing to identify further potential companies. We'll market those technologies to those companies. Hopefully that leads to a discussion, because we're solving a problem, to the license agreement, where we will negotiate terms with the company. Once that license has been done, we have an obligation then to make sure that these companies are actually following through, and we monitor them for their progress. We will set the milestones, because we can't just give technologies away and have them sit on the shelf. Certainly if it's federally funded and there's buy-door obligations, companies have to diligently commercialize these technologies. We don't want to just give something away and for it not to see the light of day, not to create impact new products that benefit society. So we'll monitor the revenues, the activity. The revenues hopefully come in through licensing, and then we go through revenue sharing, which we will do within the organization. If we have jointly owned technology between different organizations, we put into place agreements, we collaborate with our partners to make sure that we can share revenues equitably across inventors and across institutions. Timeliness is critical. So our review process, we can't do these things overnight, because there are 2,400 faculty. We've got 140 disclosures coming in. We're going to double that. There's a time for us to go through, to do an analysis, to deliver a report on what we see. So it'll take us 60 days. And so what we're saying is that when you submit to us, it's not going into a black box, but you will have meetings, and there will be a review process that you participate in, maximum 60 days. And then we will work to secure the IP protection and create the marketing materials in the next 60 days. And then we will do the outreach following that. And so basically, timely, clear, transparent communication is absolutely critical for success. Our inventors are partners with us. We're not just arbitrarily making decisions. We do this in a collaborative fashion. A little bit more information on how we may go about and review technologies. What are the things that we are looking at? This has a laser pointer on it. Okay, so in our process, initially we received a disclosure. We are going to make sure that we meet with our researchers to discuss the technology, their motivation, what is the problem that they are solving. As much as the people write on a disclosure form, and as much as you may understand from that, it's always good to reach out and have that conversation. Make sure you understand and that nothing was left out. And because we come to the table with slightly different experiences, there may be some questions we ask, some things that may be helpful to the researcher when thinking this through, rather than just blindly down a research channel that can sometimes happen. We will then assist. We will carry out IP searches to assess, is it a novel idea that could be patented or not? Is it obvious or non-obvious? How well enabled is it? And based on other work, is there any narrowness that we need to be concerned about? So we go through those sorts of IP considerations. We'll also look actually at copyright as well. Software can be both copyrighted and patented. It can be a computer implemented method to solve a particular problem. And so if you think about an iPhone, for example, iPhones have facial recognition. The facial recognition is a combination of physical hardware, including laser arrays, diffractive optical elements, and sensor arrays, as well as software that can take the input and output data that you receive to process to be able to convert a reflected light signal into an image. So copyright and patenting can exist for software. From the commercial perspective, we have to understand what the technology is solving, how big a market can exist, what does the competition look like, what other alternative solutions are out there, what are the regulatory hurdles that you may face, are these competitors also potential licensees, is this a startup? And from the technical perspective feeding into that is there a value proposition in your technology? Does it solve a pain point that industry has? Does it make something so much easier? It's something that is a smaller circuit, it's half the size, it reduces the development cycle, or what have you. Does it offer a value to the potential licensee or startup company? We go through this evaluation, we review with our researchers, we make the final recommendation, and the output of that could be we have sufficient information to say, yes, let's go and file for formal IP protection, and then we'll go through a marketing process. It may be because we've requested early stage technology that we need additional information before we're in a position to say, yes, we have something that's concrete that we know that is enabled enough for us to secure IP protection for. And in some instances, it's going to be, well, unfortunately for this particular instance, we don't think that we can file for IP protection. Here's the reason why, for a variety of these commercial and research factors, but it's feedback that we give to our faculty so that then they know when it comes to the next disclosure, the types of things that we are looking for. And that enables them to think through what they're doing, not just from the pure research perspective, but some of these other considerations that this is very similar to what we were doing at Arizona State University that led to an improvement of the quality of the disclosures, improved faculty service because of the feedback, and then helping to establish a broader pipeline, more engagement with a broader faculty community. So when it comes to the inventions, we start this process and we go through patenting. We don't patent everything. We have to make assessments through the process. Where do we cut off the process, or do we see something through the entire path? Because patenting can be very time consuming for our office, for the researchers involved. It can also be very expensive. So if we look at this kind of this timeline here, on the upper line, upper arrows, those are the legal, if you will, times where things happen. So we have an invention disclosure, it comes in, and then we provide we set up an assessment, we file a provisional patent application. We'll call that time zero. A provisional patent application can be filed for less than about $10,000. There's a range of strategies, but there's a certain risk associated with that. We then create our marketing materials, we go through our marketing campaigns, and then we'll use that marketing feedback to assess whether or not to file a non-provisional application. And a typical strategy that we will use is to file something called a PCT filing. This is a placeholder under the Patent Cooperation Treaty that can allow us, where possible, to file for international patents in multiple countries. And that stage will cost you $10,000, maybe $20,000 to do that. So it's already ramped up a cost. The PCT itself lasts 18 months. You get a search report from that. During the PCT 18 months, you get further marketing opportunities. You may have technology developments that allow you to basically sell your technology in a different fashion. You've now, instead of at a low technology readiness level, you've moved up a notch that de-risks it for industry, where they can actually understand better the value proposition. It's all informative feedback. And you may get feedback that says, this is how we do it. Why would we do this? This is twice the size. It takes twice as much energy, whatever the factors are that make it unattractive. That feedback can be used to assess whether or not you want to file international patents, because the international patenting process is roughly around $25,000 or so a territory. For overseas patents, what's the biggest part of the cost, do you think, for filing an overseas patent? translation costs. You could be looking at $8,000 to $10,000 easily of just translation costs. And then you've got follow-up office actions and things have to go back and forth. And even if you speak the language yourself, you cannot act as a translator because it has to go through officially authorized channels for translation. So it can get very, very expensive. And so consequently, if we try to patent everything, we would be poor stewards of the state funds that we are using to support the research activities at the university. We would far rather that risk of the patent costs be borne by industry. And so we try to defer as long as possible the major patent costs, because hopefully a licensee comes along and is interested in picking up the license and paying the patent costs. So that's really all I have. A few links on this last page and time for questions. The first link is to our website for ICO at Indiana University. There's the ICO team, so you can learn a little bit more about me and Nick and others that we have and what their roles are. We have IP processes have just gone up. The processes that I just spoke about today in here have gone up now on our website. We're revamping our website to make it customer focused, customer centric. We are putting more and more material to educate the communities that we work with. And lastly, we do have the 2 IP policies on the patenting and the copyrightable works that you can look at as well. And these are policies that are pretty standard across any type of research institute. So that's all I actually have, and that's all that Nick has. So I think with that, we are open to any questions you may have.
And Phil doesn't know this, but I own one of those automated cat exercising devices, and they are useful. So questions? I think there are a couple mics.
Could you tell us the process? So if a faculty member has an idea and you want them to talk with you as soon as possible, literally, does someone just email you or pick up the phone and be like, Phil, I got this idea. How does that work?
Yeah. So good question. So faculty will come up with those ideas. They will contact our office about that idea. We have a formal form that we have them fill out to complete that can capture the information regarding the invention. And we're not asking for them to necessarily recreate the wheel as an n-sided polygon. What we're looking for is sufficient information on the form to enable us to understand what the invention is, and then to use other materials. They may have submitted grant proposals, papers, or the like. Now, it may be that the idea hasn't necessarily got to that level, but they've got the basic outline, they've got some lab notebook pages or what have you that outline that stuff. They can put the information at a higher level and include the lab notebooks, and that's our trigger. We'll assign that a docket number, and that's when we'll trigger our outreach activities to make sure that we can understand where they're at with that technology, and then to guide them through the process to say, hey, you've got this level of information. What we actually need to be able to do the proper evaluation is this, this, and this. These are the missing pieces.
And I would clarify a little bit. So that I mentioned that the first step in our in interacting with our office is filing an invention disclosure. If you email one of us, we're going to immediately redirection you back to file an invention disclosure. The reason that we're doing that is that we capture the interaction in our system, it's assigned a number, and that it doesn't get lost, and that we follow up, and that we hit that 60 days or less timeline.
Yeah.
We have a question from the online community. What about Regenstrief staff? Would one need an IU faculty sponsor?
Well, that's a good question that we're working through right now. So there is an MOU between Regenstrief and IU, and that certainly talks about certain parts of IP where there is actually IU involvement. So there's maybe a Regenstrief faculty member. What it doesn't discuss, however, is if you have as Regenstrief staff or faculty and you have solely an invention that's created by Regenstrief without any involvement of IU, that falls outside of what we do. So if there's IU involvement, we certainly help, and we're actually putting into place some interinstitutional agreements right now. But this is something where and Joyce, maybe you can speak to this a little bit, but you're working, as I understand it, on some policies regarding IP as well. And there may be some relationship that we established between Regenstrief and IU that somehow fits in here. Details TBD, but good question. We're working on it.
That was actually going to be my question, which was in the past, we've had an agreement between Regenstrief and IU that that had certain terms around, royalties and other kind of divide. I know that you mentioned that in the newer policies, the inventor had gone up to 50%, which I didn't know, but I think, but I have to admit that I haven't read the new policies yet. So, but I guess that's the question. So I guess in this TBD agreement between Regenstrief and IU, that kind of stuff will all be spelled out. So is there a time frame for developing that updated agreement? Because I'm familiar with the old agreement. And is that still in effect until the new one goes into place?
So with the revenue sharing change, that's for new agreements that get executed. So prior agreements, license agreements, etc., still fall under the old revenue sharing policy. There is an MOU in place between Regenstrief and IU for which some revenues have been received for certain technologies. However, those revenues haven't yet been distributed because the MOU had some deficiencies. It didn't address certain things. We're working to fix that now. We have a master inter-institutional agreement on things where there's an IU interest. We're working to fix that so that those revenues can be distributed. But if there's to be a relationship where IU was to say work with Regenstrief on solely Regenstrief IP, certainly there's an aspect that we can do for management and what have you that can be determined. But really then it's up to the Institute to figure out what is a fair revenue distribution sharing policy. So you have the components of what goes to the general research budget for the university, what may support a research lab or a research center, and then what goes to the inventors. So this is kind of institute dependent. The percentages will vary even between universities as to what's given. So the details still being worked on, but we'll figure it out. Last week.
Okay, but for now, if there's let's say that someone was faculty member like myself is listening to this today, we go next week and have a disclosure that will fall under the MOU is what I'm hearing you say. This
would be you. So you're an employee. You're a faculty member at IU.
I am.
Yeah, so you have an obligation to sign to IU. So you submit that disclosure form in, you list yourself, your creators, whoever they happen to be. It can be other folks at Regenstrief, it could be folks at other university you're collaborating with, just that we have we have to take inventory of really everything, what the asset is itself, what the research is, the technology is, and then who created that. So that this is part of the course that we will put into place agreements with multiple universities on jointly owned technology. We do have some guidance with the MOU between Regenstrief and IU. It's not sufficient to kind of specify some of the things that we would like to say, hey, this is 25%, 75% between institution that then goes through institutional revenue sharing policies. Those are some of the other things that still need to be addressed.
Yeah, and I would say that the MOU basically said that there was a requirement to put in place an interinstitutional agreement, and that wasn't put in place. And so we're putting that in place now so that we can fix the issue of being able to redistribute the royalties that have come in and also know how to handle future royalties to be distributed. So we're addressing that actively. We actually just met earlier today on that.
Yeah. Great. All right. Thank you. Okay.
Another question. This is a great presentation. I would like to follow up to discuss how we can collaborate on various industry partners when they arise.
So the definition of projects and where the funding comes in and who's to be involved. So yeah, this is often, even within IU, this isn't an issue, but you need to specify kind of a project. If there's an interested outside party, need to come to terms with what is it they're expecting out of that research project. And it may not be that it's going to be, if you apply for an NIH grant and you get hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, that may be one thing, but industry doesn't always have that type of funding available. So it's really to understand they have a problem, we have people who can solve that problem, and to have that negotiation to bring in a research agreement, a sponsored research agreement, where as a part of that sponsored research agreement, there may be IP provisions as well that will say how outcomes of that research project can be handled. So it's a pre-disclosure, pre-intellectual property disclosure, if you will, absent there being background IP, of course, in which case you have to handle that. It can get a little bit kind of complicated, but the first thing is to make sure there's a meeting of the minds that, yes, there's an acceptable scope of work and there's an acceptable budget to perform the work, and then to put in the appropriate contracting arrangements to allow it to happen. There is a test on IP after this. Hold on one moment. Are you all prepared?
I think we're all going to know about that cat line, the cat dot.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so that was so memorable to me because I was actually doing some diligence on a laser-related technology, and it came up. And then I lost about an hour and a half of my day as I shared it with my colleagues.
Only a physicist can say.
And the researcher's last name was Amiss. And all I can say is something was amiss for that to be patented. Kevin T. Amiss, A-M-I-S-S, came from somewhere in Charlottesville in Virginia, I think. I'll have it. Somewhere else I've got an IP 101 presentation where I talk about patents and the content. And one of the things to bear in mind there, it's a method patent. So one of the things with method patent, there's a serious message behind that. With a method patent, if you cannot detect the method is being used, how do you enforce it?
And those are the types of things that we handle. And I guess just, IP trivia, patent trivia. Let's see if Phil gets this one. What's the most patented innovation in the world? You're close. You're close. The toothbrush. So I think every year there's more patent applications on toothbrushes than there are on any other item. So. You can innovate anything, I guess.
And if you look at many patents that come out of Japan, they are very active in the toilet space. They have advanced toilets with water jets that do this, that, and the other, and they have a slew of patents in that area.